She stood at the altar 7 times. 7 wedding dresses trailing behind her, each heavier than the last. 7 promises of forever, whispered in a small village shrine decorated with kola leaves and burning incense. 7 men who loved her, and yet, not one marriage. The first groom vanished the morning of the ceremony, leaving only his agbada behind. The second collapsed during the vows, gasping as if the air itself had turned against him. The third was found unconscious in his home the night before, unable to explain the shadows he'd seen. By the 4th attempt, people stopped asking questions. They just whispered. In the marketplace, at the river, in the village square, they whispered about the girl whom destiny refused to let marry. Some called it coincidence. Others remembered stories from generations ago, in her grandmother's time. The same pattern. The same unexplainable tragedies. The same confusion in the bride's eyes, as if she herself couldn't understand why love kept slipping through her fingers. What force could be strong enough to destroy love 7 times? What secret could a family carry that would shadow their daughters for generations? Her name was Amina Okafor, 28 years old, living in the small village of Umudik in Nigeria. She worked as a teacher at the village primary school. She volunteered at the local shrine every market day. She baked akra and moi for village festivals. By all accounts, she was the kind of woman any man would be blessed to marry. Yet every time she got close to walking down that aisle, something happened. Something always felt wrong. Was it truly a curse, as the older women in her family believed? Or was there a logical explanation that everyone was missing? Could spiritual forces really reach across generations, targeting the women in one bloodline, preventing them from finding happiness? And if so, why? What had her ancestors done to deserve this? To answer these questions, we need to go back. Back to where it all began. Back to a time when her great-grandmother made a choice that would echo through the decades, affecting daughters she would never meet. Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Amina grew up in her grandmother's compound, a cluster of mud brick huts with thatched roofs, surrounded by palm trees and a small vegetable garden that bloomed with hibiscus and morina. Her mother had died when Amina was only 5, a sudden illness that took her in less than a week. Her father, unable to cope with the loss, had drifted away, marrying another woman in a neighboring village. So it was just Amina and her grandmother, Mama Ife, in the compound filled with the smell of roasted yam and memories. Mama Ife never talked much about the past. She was a quiet woman, always humming Igbo folk songs while she cooked, always watching Amina with eyes that held both love and a deep, unexplainable sadness. Sometimes, late at night, Amina would hear her grandmother praying softly at the shrine, asking the ancestors for protection and mercy. As a child, Amina didn't understand. She was happy, carefree, dreaming of the day she would fall in love and have a family of her own. She excelled in school, made friends easily, and had a warmth about her that drew people in. By 16, boys were already asking her to dances and village festivals, leaving notes, finding excuses to escort her home along the dusty paths. Her first serious relationship came at 19, with a young man named Chinedu from the neighboring town. He was kind, ambitious, studying to be an engineer in the city. They dated for 2 years, and when he proposed under the large Irako tree by the river, Amina thought all her dreams were finally coming true. But 3 months before the wedding, Chinedu was in a motorbike accident. He survived, but with injuries so severe that he spent a year recovering. By the time he healed, something between them had changed. He couldn't explain it, but he felt compelled to leave Umudik, to start fresh somewhere else. He broke off the engagement gently, apologetically, but Amina saw something in his eyes she couldn't name, fear. It was as if he sensed a shadow she couldn't see. That was the first time. Amina was heartbroken but told herself it was just terrible timing. She threw herself into her work, earned her teaching degree, and stayed close to care for Mama Ife, whose health was declining. For 2 years, she avoided relationships, focusing on her students and village responsibilities. But Mama Ife, even as her body weakened, seemed troubled by something deeper than illness. She would stare at Amina with tears in her eyes and whisper, "I'm so sorry, my child. I'm so sorry." Amina never understood what she was apologizing for. At 24, Amina met Obina at the village shrine. He was a young priest in training, charming and devoted, with a laugh that could light up any gathering. They fell in love quickly, and within a year, they were engaged. This time, Amina was certain it would work. Obina was strong, faithful, and steady. Nothing could go wrong. But 2 weeks before the wedding, Obina's father died suddenly. The grief consumed him, and he began having vivid dreams, nightmares of himself at the altar with Amina, ending every time in fire, collapse, or darkness. He tried to dismiss them as stress, but they grew more intense. Finally, unable to bear it, he confessed to Amina that he couldn't go through with the marriage. He didn't know why, but something inside him screamed danger. Amina was devastated. 2 failed engagements. People in the village were starting to talk. Starting to remember stories about Mama Ife, about how she too had never married the man she loved. About how Amina's great-grandmother had died young, unmarried, and alone. The whispers grew louder. Was there a pattern? Was there something wrong with the women in this family? After Obina, Amina withdrew into herself. She stopped attending the shrine regularly, avoided village gatherings, and focused entirely on her teaching. She convinced herself that maybe marriage wasn't meant for her. Maybe her life was to touch others through her students, through small acts of care and kindness. But loneliness is a heavy burden, and the heart always seeks connection. At 26, she met Emeka at a teachers' conference in a neighboring town. He was from another village, which felt like a blessing. He didn't know her past or the whispers of the villagers. They started dating long distance, and for months, everything felt perfect. Emeka was patient, understanding, and when he proposed under a baobab tree in his village, Amina hesitated. She told him about her history, the failed engagements, the heartbreak, the whispers of a family curse, expecting him to walk away. But Emeka laughed it off. "That's just coincidence," he said. "We make our own destiny." They set a wedding date 6 months away. For the first time in years, Amina allowed herself to hope. But as the wedding approached, strange things began happening. Emeka developed sudden fevers and dizzy spells that no healer or doctor could explain. He would wake in the middle of the night, claiming he felt a presence in their home. His mother, a deeply spiritual woman, approached Amina one evening. "I've been praying about this marriage," she said, voice trembling. "And I keep sensing darkness. I don't know what it means, but I think you need to examine your family's spiritual history." Amina was hurt but also terrified. Deep down, she suspected the truth. 1 month before the wedding, Emeka called it off. His symptoms vanished the moment he made the decision. Within days, he was completely healthy and moved away, unable to face Amina. That was the 3rd time. Amina, now 27, had become known throughout Umudik as the unlucky bride, the woman who could not keep a man. Some pitied her, others avoided her, fearing what they could not see but somehow sensed. Mama Ife's health was failing rapidly, and one evening, as Amina sat by her bedside, her grandmother finally spoke the truth she had held for decades. "It's not your fault, my child," Mama Ife whispered. "It has haunted our family for generations. Your great-grandmother, she made a mistake when she was young. She fell in love with a man who was already promised to another woman. The other woman's family practiced old ways, ways we don't fully understand. When my mother refused to let him go, they put something on our line. No woman in our direct line would ever marry. They would get close, taste happiness, and it would be taken away. Your mother, she tried to break it by marrying your father quickly, without proper rituals, but look what happened. And now, you." Amina listened, tears streaming down her face, unable to process the magnitude of what she was hearing. Curses. Spiritual bindings. She lived in the 21st century, how could this be real? But how else could she explain the heartbreak, the repeated loss, the fear that drove men away? 3 days later, Mama Ife passed, leaving Amina truly alone, carrying the weight of a family secret she didn't yet know how to resolve. After her grandmother's death, Amina went through Mama Ife's belongings, searching for answers. In an old wooden trunk, she discovered dozens of letters written by her great-grandmother, dating back to the 1920s and 1930s. The letters told of a passionate love affair with a man named Chikwudi, who had been engaged to a prominent family's daughter in the village. Amina's great-grandmother, also named Amina, worked as a weaver and met Chikwudi when he commissioned a ceremonial cloth. They fell in love recklessly, secretly, for 2 years. Chikwudi promised he would leave his fiancée, but fear of the family's influence held him back. When Amina's great-grandmother became pregnant, she gave Chikwudi an ultimatum: leave his fiancée or never see her again. Chikwudi chose his fiancée. The baby, Amina's grandmother, was born out of wedlock, causing whispers and shame across the village. Shortly after the birth, Chikwudi's fiancée's mother came to confront Amina's great-grandmother. You tried to take what wasn't yours. Now you and yours will never have what you seek. You will watch love slip away again and again until you understand some things are not to be disturbed. Amina sat in the dusty trunk room, holding the letters, feeling the weight of decades of pain pressing down. Her great-grandmother spent her remaining years seeking spiritual guidance from village elders, diviners, and priests, but nothing could undo what had been set in motion. She died at 34, never married, watching Chikwudi build a family with someone else. Mama Ife had tried to live a normal life, but every relationship ended in heartbreak. She came close twice, but both men walked away. Now it was Amina's turn. But Amina had a crucial advantage: education, access to knowledge, and the ability to research. She sought guidance from both Christian counselors and traditional village diviners. She learned about generational curses, bloodline patterns, and unresolved family trauma manifesting as repeated heartbreak. She met Elder Neka, an elderly spiritual guide and healer known throughout the region for breaking generational patterns. Elder Neka listened carefully. This is not just about coincidence, she said. It is unresolved pain that travels through your bloodline. Your great-grandmother was wronged, but the anger and fear that followed created a pattern. It is subtle, spiritual, invisible, but it is real. Men sense danger they cannot explain. It is a warning in the spirit, not just bad luck. Elder Neka explained that breaking the cycle would require reconciliation with Chikwudi's descendants. Acknowledgement and forgiveness had to occur on both sides, or the pattern would continue. Amina spent months tracing Chikwudi's family, discovering his great-granddaughter, Margaret, a retired teacher in the neighboring town. Amina reached out carefully, expressing interest in family history without revealing everything. They agreed to meet. Margaret, with silver hair and gentle eyes, said softly, "I know who you are. My grandmother told me about your family. She said her mother never wanted anyone cursed or harmed. She was young, hurt, and humiliated. She tried to undo what happened, but didn't know if it was real or legend. She always wondered about your grandmother, whether she ever found peace." Margaret's words hit Amina like a sudden downpour on a dry day. All these years, she had imagined Chikwudi's fiancé as a villain, someone who had intentionally destroyed her family's happiness. But the truth was far more human. The woman had been a victim too, abandoned by the man she loved, humiliated publicly, forced to marry him anyway to preserve her family's honor. Her mother, acting out of anger and fear, had caused harm she later regretted. "My grandmother left letters too," Margaret said, pulling a small envelope from her bag. "She wanted me to give these to your family if I ever had the chance. She died 10 years ago but made me promise." Inside were letters addressed to the descendants of Amina, written by Chikwudi's wife in her later years. They were full of remorse, apology, and a plea for forgiveness. I never wanted harm to come to her or her children. What my mother did was done in anger, and I was too young and hurt to stop her. I have prayed for years that someday this wrong could be made right. Please know that I forgive her, and I hope you forgive me for the pain my family caused yours." Amina wept as she read the letters. For the first time, she felt generations of tension and pain begin to lift. Here was the missing piece: acknowledgement and forgiveness. Everyone involved had been hurt. There were no pure villains, just people making choices out of love, pain, and fear. Margaret reached across the table and took Amina's hand. "I forgive your great-grandmother on behalf of my family," she said. "And I ask that you forgive ours for the harm they caused. Let this end with us. Let our grandmothers rest in peace." In that moment, Amina felt something shift inside her. A weight she had carried all her life, unseen but heavy, began to lift. She and Margaret spent hours sharing family stories, laughing, crying, and marveling at how two families had been bound by pain for generations, and now, for the first time, by healing. Elder Neka had been right. The curse was never about magic or superstition in the way movies depicted. It was about unhealed wounds, patterns of fear, and guilt passed down like heirlooms. Breaking it required truth, acknowledgement, and forgiveness. Amina visited Mama Ife's grave and promised her that the cycle was broken, that no more daughters would carry this burden. She visited her mother's grave as well, weeping for all the women in her family who had suffered because of choices made nearly a century ago. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where love could exist without fear. 6 months later, at a village festival celebrating the yam harvest, Amina met Daniel, a kind, easygoing contractor helping repair the community hall. He had a daughter from a previous marriage and a warm, generous heart. They started talking, then having coffee, then dating. Amina was cautious, hyper-aware of every moment, waiting for disaster. But Daniel was different. He didn't have nightmares. He didn't fall ill. His family welcomed her with open arms. When Daniel proposed a year later, Amina said yes, but only after telling him everything, from her great-grandmother's story, to the failed engagements, to her meeting with Margaret. She expected him to think she was crazy or leave. Instead, Daniel asked, simply, "Do you believe it's broken?" Amina thought about the letters, Margaret's forgiveness, and the work she had done with Elder Neka. "Yes," she said. "I do." Daniel smiled. "Then so do I. We make our own future." They married the following spring in the village shrine where Mama Ife had prayed for Amina all those years. Margaret attended, sitting in the front row, wiping tears from her eyes. Elder Neka performed the blessing. As Amina stood at the altar for the 8th time, she realized this wasn't just about breaking a curse, it was about breaking patterns, about choosing healing over bitterness, forgiveness over resentment, hope over fear. Her great-grandmother had lived in a time of fewer options, of harsh social judgment, of pain with no outlet. But Amina lived in a different time, a time when she could make different choices. When Daniel slipped the ring on her finger, Amina thought of all the women in her family who had stood on the edge of happiness and watched it disappear. She made them a promise. "This ends with me. Your suffering was not in vain. I will live the life you couldn't. I will remember you not as victims of a curse, but as women who did their best with what they had, who loved deeply even when it cost everything." The reception was simple but joyful, full of laughter, dancing, and the kind of happiness that comes from knowing you've overcome something real. Margaret gave a toast about how healing between families can take generations, but when it comes, it is worth the wait. Amina's students made her a card signed by every child in her class, with drawings of hearts and cola trees. Daniel's daughter called her Mom for the first time. That night, as Amina and Daniel drove away to start their honeymoon, she looked back at the village shrine. She almost saw them, her great-grandmother, young and hopeful, Mama Ife, finally smiling, her mother, waving goodbye. "We're free now. Thank you. And so are you, she imagined them saying. 5 years later, Amina gave birth to a daughter. She named her Rose, after her grandmother, and gave her the middle name Margaret, after the woman who helped break the chain. Holding her daughter for the first time, Amina wept, not from sadness, but relief. This little girl would grow up free from the shadow that haunted 4 generations of women. She would choose her own path, make her own mistakes, and live without inherited fear. So what do you think? Was this truly a curse, or was it the weight of unresolved trauma passed down through generations? Could you have done what Amina did, reaching out to the family that hurt yours, seeking reconciliation instead of blame? Think about your own family. Are there patterns repeating that you don't even recognize? Are there wounds that have never been acknowledged? Amina's story teaches that healing is possible, but it requires courage, honestly confronting the past, extending forgiveness, and choosing hope over fear. If you've made it this far, drop a comment and let us know, would you have believed in the curse, or dismissed it as coincidence? Could you have faced your family's past with the bravery Amina showed? This is just one story among thousands of families carrying secrets and pain they don't know how to heal. If you want to hear more true stories about breaking generational cycles, about families overcoming the impossible, subscribe to our channel. African Tales King. Here, we bring the rich, mysterious, and unforgettable stories of Africa to life, stories of love, struggle, courage, and wisdom passed down through generations. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an epic tale from our villages, forests, and kingdoms. And in the comments, let us know, which African legend or family story would you like us to tell next? Next week, we'll tell the story of a man who discovered his entire family had been living a lie for 50 years, and the truth changed everything. You won't want to miss it. Remember, you are not defined by your past. You have the power to create a different future. Will you be brave enough to try?